Guru Nation, welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Look, we bring you real people working in the industry. Occasionally, we'll have like the so-called thought leaders, but they all regurgitate the same thing because they're not active, right? Well, we have like the goal of this show, this podcast is to bring you active people, people that you, the audience, can learn from in real time and relate with. So we got Velena Trask. She is someone that really does it all at the big CRO level. Her LinkedIn's underneath. She's got project management skills. She's been at the big CRO world for over a decade. She works with sponsors directly. She works even with other CROs. She's in the contracts. She's in the site relationship. She does PM, all kinds of stuff. That's a true generalist, right? Velena's here to discuss her career, how she got started. Velena, you're going to be an inspiration to many that watch, and many will be connecting with you. So maybe we start from the beginning, because when this is the problem, when we have somebody, and I just introduced you as someone who's in the trenches doing the work, but when you have somebody who's been in the industry so long, you lose the relationship with the people trying to get in, right? And if you're listening, this is not just for career seekers, all right? If you are a site, Velena's directly has a hand in contracts and budgets too. That's part of her day-to-day role. She does it all. Feasibility contract, all this stuff, right? So there's stuff here for sites and job seekers. So Velena, with that being said, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Great to be here.
So I guess we'll start like I start with everyone. Like, how did you get started in this industry?
Um, the meme that was circulating through the pandemic, we just kind of slide down the slippery slope and you fall into the garbage can. It wasn't a garbage can. I would say it was more of a, gold mine. It was a career that I never expected to get into. And over the years, it's proven to be so meaningful. It drives me to do the best I can every day. But yeah, my boyfriend back then, who found me in Virginia and convinced me to move in with him in North Carolina, as I was working for IKEA manufacturing facility, doing accounting there. He was like, "Hey, I'll find you a job. I know people." And he's in the recruiting industry too. So he found me a job with what was back in the day a smaller CRO, but still one of the major players in the market today. I got in through accounting. I learned a ton about project finance. I learned a ton about our sites, about the struggles that they're having financially, how critical it is to make sure that the contract is done right. Otherwise, the site is not going to get paid on time. And that's how I've connected with a lot of sites and just connections in the industry through knowing that how important it is to pay our sites. And our mutual friend, Dr. Fox, um, I've helped him on numerous occasions because that one little opportunity that got my foot in the door opened such huge doors where through supportive management at the CRO, I was able to get into study startup. I've done site contracts, budget negotiations. I've probably negotiated with a lot of your sites, Dan, but
Yep.
Dr. Fox's sites, all the site networks, I've probably worked with them. And my career started progressing through the growth of the organization, mostly because there were no solid processes in place. There was the intent. So they saw that I was very process oriented. I knew how to see the big picture. I knew how the things connect, what causes what's important, what's critical, what we need to move forward. So
That's
I
the
was
key
part
part.
of,
That's the key part. People struggle with learning. Like they can learn the basics, right? The 4-hour
yeah,
video, but how things connect is like where you go from algebra to calculus. Like that's
Oh
really
yeah,
like where the magic is. That's where the truth is. And so you were able to do that early on, how the different stakeholders connect um
exactly.
and this was
And
so you joined a small CRO that grew and you grew with it, right?
grew with it, yes, yes, pretty much. Um, because they grew, they went through mergers and acquisitions,
How did you
and
survive? Were there layoffs or redundancies? Like how did you stick around?
so I think the insider information about the CRO world, there are functional areas that generate a lot of revenue, and there's functional areas that don't generate as much revenue. So the side contracts and budgets, if you are great at what you do, it's job security. A good contract negotiator, contract manager is always in high demand. So
Mm. What
yeah.
makes a good, what's the metric? Well, say as much as you can, but what's like, just give us maybe a high level look at what makes you good at your job from the contract side. I'm always curious, like from the CRO world, what that actually
So
means.
from the contract side, you basically get a workload of X amount of sites, X amount of studies, depending on which type of model you might be in, whether you're FSP, FSO, whatever. There's different models within each CRO. Some are better, some are not as great. What makes you good is knowing how to make a connection with sites, with the stakeholders there, knowing what tools you need, what information you need to make that connection, knowing how to dial the phone and get in touch with the person if you haven't heard from them, um, and just be clear in your expectations with the site that you're working with. Hey, I want to get this done because based on the amount of contracts I execute within a month, year, whatever, that's what my performance appraisal based on. And I think that's
Mm,
one of the things that was motivating me to be a high volume contracts negotiator.
I
Whenever there was
see.
a fast paced study, they would throw it at me, and I'm like, done, done. And then next thing I know, I get a cooler from sponsor for helping being part of the team that achieved the first patient in. So
You say you get a cooler,
yes, back in the day when it was okay. I mean,
like a
like a lunch
beer,
cooler.
like oh, a lunch cooler.
Oh, I wish it
Okay.
was a beer. Yeah, like a lunch
Like a
cooler.
32 pack of beer. Okay,
I
lunch cooler.
wish.
I
No,
get it.
can't do
So
that now.
so the sponsor would send you that, say, hey, you know what, Valena, thank you for
Well,
this.
everybody got on the team, but because of I think in the end, it's a team effort.
I see.
You have to be part of the team
So
and make that happen.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, and as much as you can share, is money like the end all be all, or is it really the speed, or is it really like just getting these contracts done? I know there's a range. If you take any study, there's a range of like, okay, this the minimum, this is like the lowest budget side. They don't know it, but they're the lowest, and then this is the highest, and then
Yeah.
somewhere in between. Are these limits established beforehand, or do they just happen organically based on the site skill? And then are you told, hey, you know what? Try to keep the budgets in line. What's like priority? Is it saving money or is it like just getting these sites up and running and like fast?
Um, there is a cost associated with getting to the market late. Look what happened to Johnson and Johnson, their vaccine, the most recent one. That they scrapped the whole program because everybody else got ahead of them. I believe it was RSV. So cost. Cost is one of my pet peeves. Currently, right now, I have worked with Grant Plan. I have worked with Grants Manager. I have met with the salespeople who sell those benchmarking systems. I know very well how they're supposed to work. Only sponsors and CROs have access to them, right? Sites don't have access to that data that's in there. Also, only sponsors and CROs, because they pay that licensing fee, they um, also heavily rely on that fair market value benchmarking to ensure that they're not overpaying sites. So yes, you have a site list of 20, 40, whatever, um, before the sites are selected or awarded the study. There is a process that goes on. The whole study budget needs to be put together, and then the per patient budget has to be put together, how much we want to pay each site for each patient, for this is how many screen failures we anticipate based on the indication we're working on. We also know we have to pay sites for startup. We also know the overhead. So all that information comes out of those benchmarking systems. And we expect generally as a rule that the 50th percentile, the one that we go as our baseline, will be accepted, statistically speaking, per vendor by 50% of sites. It's not the case today. Used to be, yes,
Hmm.
but after that 50th percentile, they make the top parameter, let's say 75th or 90th. It's whatever the system spits out. That's what we take as almost religion. And this is the range that we're going to negotiate in. So
Wow.
procedures, each one of the procedures, each one of the costs that comes out of the benchmarking system, we have to have some kind of base to the, true value of the what the services the sites are providing are going to be worth. Pandemic came, a lot of things changed. I've seen so many things change, especially in my last role as site relationship lead, because I was in such close contact with sites all the time. They would explain, these are the costs that are changing. These are the requirements that our sponsors are putting on us. These are the systems that we need to accommodate all these new requirements and so on. So there's a lot of costs that these benchmarking systems, they don't have them. And the other pet peeve of mine about the benchmarking systems is the fact that the data is only as good as the data that's put into them. So, for example, we negotiate a contract and budget, and that contract is supposed to go back to metadata or the grants manager or the grant plan, and they're supposed to put that data in and then true up the numbers of what those procedures actually cost in the market. So let's say informed consent used to cost, $100, and now it's costing 150, 200. So metadata is supposed to put in that 150, 200 back in the system. And next time when they refresh the data, it's supposed to show us, okay, the current market value is the 150, 200, not 100. Well, unfortunately, I don't know why. And I would love to have a conversation with metadata people at some point, or grant plan people, like, why are we still seeing the $100 for the ICF 10 years later?
Is it
And
because the sponsors prefer that it's in their best interest to keep it low?
the
Or
data is not updated.
why? First of all, I didn't even know metadata does this kind of stuff. I thought it was just
Yeah.
EDC. I knew they do like ePro and like operation stuff, but I didn't know they
Yeah.
get involved in the payments on the sponsor CRO side.
They have a very robust fair market value benchmarking system they've had for
Mm,
over 10 years.
interesting. Is the brand name for this grant plan or is that something else?
Grants manager.
Grants
So they're
manager. So
direct competitors. Yeah.
I see. Wow. I've been doing this since '05. I've been on the other side, on the site side, negotiating. Hey, here's a budget until I found Chris. So the first 10 years maybe of my career, I was doing every budget contract myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Oh,
was nothing. There was no process whatsoever. It was like I
yeah.
got the original. I heard from other sites you're supposed to negotiate. Sometimes I would
Yes.
double it. Sometimes I would go out, like depends on I have ultimately got more sophisticated. I learned like the therapeutic area. Okay, this one should be higher. This one would be nice if it was this number. Ultimately, we came to like an agreement. But I know some sites don't even negotiate at all. What percentage do you think of sites that just do zero negotiation? They say, thank you, Valena. This is like great budget.
I have at least 10 studies that I'm overseeing right now. Every budget is negotiated.
Everybody.
Sites are becoming more savvy, and I am rooting for sites. I am a forever site advocate because
Wow.
if it wasn't for you guys, we would not have patients. We
Yeah.
would not have data. So effort. Um, if you can explain to me, if I was negotiating with you, if you can explain to me what is your hourly rate for the study coordinator, nurse, tech, PI, whatever, and if you can explain to me how long it takes them to do the ICF. Does the PI do the ICF? Or is it then somebody that they've delegated on the delegation log who does the
Mhm.
ICF? Oh, Kitty.
Get a
So
new
if you
one.
can rationalize, if you can show me the math, I'm a very math spreadsheet person. If you can show me the math, how you came up with your costs, um, I will let you have it, and I will root for you in front of the sponsor or whoever,
Right.
that yes, these costs are reasonable.
So is the old adage true? I've learned this almost day one. If you can justify it, it'll probably be allowed.
Yes.
All right. That's a good rule to live by, sites.
I
Um,
know. I will tell you, when I see blood draws for central lab, if
yeah.
I see, oh, we have to draw, let's say 5 tubes, right,
Hmm.
at $100 each.
Hmm.
Does it really take $500 of phlebotomist time on, a healthy adult, or, whatever adult study,
Right.
let's say CNS study? Does it really take $500 of phlebotomist effort? How much you paying your phlebotomist? However, if it is a pediatric study, you have the parent, the 2-year-old child, the study coordinator, the phlebotomist, everybody's there trying to calm down the child, tell him it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
okay, take the time to do it right, make sure that everything's labeled and so on, and then, send it off to the
Play with
processing
them. You gotta
area,
manage the
whatever.
situation.
You have to manage the situation. And, I have the firsthand experience, the example that I just showed you. I have been there with my son at an academic site within a clinical research area of the university. I've been there. I've been on the site side. I've been in site assessments where I'm performing the assessment, and I'm a very savvy healthcare consumer myself. So if you can rationalize why it takes you $2,500 to do a 30-minute infusion for a study drug that's approved,
Yeah.
can you explain to me
Yeah.
why?
Well,
Why? I would not even see that on my own medical bill. So
a lot of the stuff, and then some of these budgets, they don't even break them down like
yeah,
into like processing the labs, right? Because and that could vary from study to study. And a lot of the
yeah.
issues we have is as a site, you don't know how
You don't have the lab
complicated.
manual because it's not ready.
Yeah, yeah. And even
Yeah,
if you
when you
did
get your
like,
budget, the lab manual is not ready yet.
and even if you did, do you think the person negotiating the contract read it? Like they're relying on the
No.
coordinator to tell them, hey, is
They
this
didn't
it?
even read the protocol title to
Yeah,
understand what the
exactly.
study is about. It's
Exactly.
like,
So you're kind of like opening a Pandora's box whenever you start a new study as a site, because we have one study where it literally takes like a couple hours to process the tubes right. There's like 10 tubes. Some have to be double centrifuge, some have to go in the incubator, some have to go frozen, some ambient, and every visit's different.
yeah, okay,
So
well, I
that's
would
a
I would
lot.
pay you a lot of money for that. Yeah, and the benchmarking system does not account for that.
Exactly.
Your budget is going to be only as good as the person and their training was, the person who creates those budgets. So bigger CROs will have whole departments of people who are trained to create budgets, budget templates, budget parameters based on the grant plan or grant manager.
Does it look bad on you? Or I know you're a manager now, so you don't necessarily do this one-on-one anymore, but on the contract negotiator on the sponsor CRO side, does it look bad on you if after the patient randomizes a few subjects or after the site randomizes a few patients, they come back and renegotiate the budget? Does that look bad on you?
Nope,
Okay.
we just underestimated, but good luck getting that.
You can get it. I've my experience,
You
if
can
you
get it when there's a
randomize,
protocol amendment. Push for it. If you know there's a protocol amendment, push for it. It would be my recommendation for the sites, because
let's see.
it's usually the very first sites who get their boots on the ground and they figure out, oh, this protocol is actually much more complex than we thought it was. The lab kits are shipped in a garbage bag and we have to make our own kits.
It's true. It's so
An
true.
exaggeration, but yeah, I've seen those pictures. I don't know if it was you or Brad who posted them, but like, yeah, the first site activated, first few are going to be the ones who are really going to see whether the study was designed properly, well, not in a hurry, make sure that corners weren't cut. One of my pet peeves, cutting corners, because we're talking about subject safety.
Hmm.
But no, my recommendation to site, once you have your data to show for it, go back during a protocol amendment and say, hey, we need to renegotiate this because the effort that was estimated initially, and here's our site performance to show also, yeah, we need to negotiate.
Was miscalculated. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Now to give some, I told you sites, you're gonna get value out of this. If you stayed, if you just heard the first minute and you said, "Oh, this can be about careers," well, you missed out. So if you know a site, tell them, "Hey, go listen to this." Let's go back to careers though.
Yeah.
You said something earlier about FSP versus FSO. I know
Yeah.
FSP, I don't know FSO. Like, can you explain to me and to maybe the audience that like what's the difference?
So the FSO is my mind is blanked. I don't know the correct abbreviation, but it's the full service. So when you do the full service study from when you full fully outsourced, full study outsourcing, yeah, it's a when the sponsor does not have the resources in house, and they have to outsource the entire study to a vendor, CRO, different vendors, whatever they pick and choose who they like to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So on the full service side within the CRO, you have every functional area doing everything for the sponsor per the contract, per whatever the scope is, whatever they want to do. You know, they might do feasibility, they might do study startup, CRAs are within the CRO, everything, data management. You know, it's basically a menu. What do you want CRO to do for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then FSP side is where a CRO has a relationship with a sponsor, and sponsor wants to outsource to CRO only one specific function. So, for example, side contracts. They only want the CRO to do side contracts for them, or they only want to use CROs, CRAs. And there's
Mm-hmm.
many reasons for that. I don't think I'm a stakeholder who can explain what are the benefits of each, but it
It
when
boils
you
down to
are
more
part of,
control, probably.
yeah, yeah, and also risk management as well. And you know, I've been on both sides. I enjoy it. Every one of them has their pros and cons. You get embedded into the culture of one or the other. And then you have an identity crisis. Who do I belong to, the CRO or the sponsor?
Right, right. And it's usually like the bigger pharma that does the FSP
Yeah.
model because
Hmm.
it costs, I'm imagining it costs more and they're okay with it
Yeah.
because they've got the money. And then when it's a smaller sponsor, typically it's FSO because they don't
Yep.
really know what they're doing and
They
nor do
know
they
what they're
have the
doing. You
budget.
have to hold their hand.
That's
Then
right.
then they come to the big CRO. They get scared because
Yeah.
they have trust issues. And yeah, I was at Magi back in 2019. I was actually one of the panelists for the budget conundrum discussion. It was quite interesting.
What was the
um
topics?
it was the budget conundrum.
What's the
What do we do when
conundrum?
we have an impasse about the budget? When you
Uh,
have the sponsor, the CRO, and the site, we just get into an impasse, and how do we solve it? Because what's more important to site, what's more important to the sponsor, the CRO, and how do we resolve it? What are the things that we need to have? So
I
on that
see.
topic, I think we already touched on the fact that you have to explain to CRO or sponsor, why do you want what you want? Why are you asking what you want? Show me the data. Show me, you know, what are the activities that you need covered and why it's not covered by your overhead. What does your overhead is meant to cover for you to request that rate? How much are you paying to your PI study coordinator, and so on. So have a documentation ready. When you send your very first counter back to CRO or the sponsor during your contract negotiations, or let's say the budget, have your documentation ready up front so the CRO can have it as a backup in the event it's outside the parameters, and they can just escalate your requests right away if you could. But have documentation for your overhead, for your startup fee, for your
Mhm.
pharmacy lab, startup, closeout, maintenance, whatever. I mean, I've seen 30-page documents that are full of explanations of what each fee is, and this is how we came
30
up with it.
page documents
I mean, some
for,
sites go above and beyond.
but these gotta be the academic medical centers,
Of
right?
course, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
there's no
yes.
private site in their right mind doing this. I don't think there's a need for that. You talking so for all their justification, right? Not just overhead policy.
Yeah. Have it
Okay,
on your letterhead, nicely organized, everything that you want, and explain why. So
I got it. But
document archiving, who archives documents? I don't know. Last
mhm.
time I was at a site, all the documents were in the cloud.
Well, yeah, I mean
But
that happens
yeah,
now.
have
We
different
use
fees that you need covered. Put them in a paper on a pretty letterhead.
pretty letterhead, yeah. I mean, we use
Hmm.
like CRO for eReg. We use Viva Site Vault for various different things. So we might do it and then upload it to one of those portals and probably say, well, we could send you the link because you don't need an account to view it, but
There you
oftentimes just
go.
a PDF
See?
file is the
Perfect.
way to go. PDF
Yeah,
file is
send
the
a
way to go.
PDF file with your first counter to on the budget.
If
You're
you
gonna make your life so much easier.
maybe that's well, let's save that for later. Career, okay, career seekers. You got
Career.
in based on your accounting and financial background.
Hmm.
CRO saw that attractive. A growing CRO said, "Hey, you know what? We actually need this." So, Velena, love to have you on board. You grew within, so you've said you've done feasibility, you've done study startup, you've done like project management type stuff. I mean, it sounds like your skill set is basically clinical trial manager. Like you've
Yeah.
done finance, obviously, you've done startup, you've done operations. What's, I guess, what was it like intentional the way you decided to grow your skill set, or did it just happen organically and not worry about it too much, just whatever the job entails?
So I love learning. I've always loved learning. Um, I like to make the analogy that my brain is like a sponge. It soaks up everything, every little bit of information that I learned along the way. It helps me one way or the other downstream. And yeah, I just love learning about what are the other process steps that happen before or after, and how can we make it work together more seamlessly. Um, and as a next step in my career where I'm looking to grow is that clinical project management, overseeing the different functional areas, making sure that everybody has what they need to get up and running. All the vendors are contracted, all the vendors are doing the job they're supposed to do, all the functional areas are moving along swiftly at pace where we need to meet, the first site activated, first patient enrolled, and so on, last site activated, just seeing the whole process. And I've also, in my previous role, I've been involved in escalations regarding database locks. Like, hey, we cannot find the data management people at this huge cancer institution that is very reputable on the West Coast. Um, we can't lock the database for the entire study because they are so behind on their query resolution.
Hey, I've monitored a site
So,
like that, probably that same site. I think
oh
I know
yeah,
who it
yeah.
is. Mm.
Yeah, so I've seen those situations, and I'm a huge problem solver. And because being in one place has sort of allowed me to learn every nook and cranny of the CRO world, of the whole process. When somebody comes to me, like Dr. Fox, hey, we haven't gotten paid. You have to know your systems. You have to know how to find information that you need to get things moving along. Yeah, so he threw a very challenging problem at me that he had been dealing for a couple years, actually. I went and I ran with it, and he got paid. And every time he got paid, he's shot me an email like, "Hey, thanks for figuring this out. We're finally getting paid like we're supposed to per our contract." So,
And that's part of your
it
role as a site relationships manager, right? Is keeping
yeah,
sites
so
happy.
yeah, yeah, I was one of the people in the group who whose initiative was to ensure the sites were getting paid. So there is intent within the CRO world to pay the sites, pay their own time. I mean, those departments are ginormous. There's so many different functions, but there are so many obstacles to sites getting paid on time. It's ridiculous. So knowing that, if you can fix something at the very beginning on the contract budget template development stage, if you have that awareness, you fix it there, it just flows. You never have a problem. When I was a study lead inside contracts, I would create the budget templates, I would create the contract templates, I would hand it over. I would have a conversation with the sponsor about, hey, I think we need to make these parameters this and that, and this is why. And I'm worried about your enrollment, so we need to ensure that our stipends are adequate. And just handed it over to the negotiator. I never heard from her. Never. Maybe once I touched base with her. We had a kickoff meeting. Never heard from her again. There were no escalations. And a few months later, I check in with her. I'm like, so how's it going? She's like, oh, we've been done months ago. Thank you for the wonderful budget parameters and the setting up the study for success, essentially. So I love wins like that. I'm a perfectionist, which, yeah, sometimes bites me back, but
It's good or bad. It's good and bad.
it's good or bad. But you
Yeah.
know why you're doing this. You always have to remember why you're doing what you're doing. I do it for my son. I do it for all the patients with unmet healthcare needs. What keeps me going is when there's no site activated on a study and they have a patient who's waiting for this treatment. That will be my number one priority. And that
So
is
you
because
actually
I work
think
in
about
allied
that,
oncology.
right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I am such an empath.
Mm.
I think about it. It is much more to me than looking at the protocol. When I read the protocol, when I try to familiarize myself with the design of the study, I see the endoscopy room where the patient might get the endoscopy. I see the biopsy procedure. I see all the lab draws in my head. I see the vital signs that they're getting. I see the scales that somebody might be administering on them. I see them getting an infusion. I just don't see, black and white PDF. I see
Right.
much more. I see the big picture. I think about the patient and I immediately address it like, hey, we need to ensure that an Alzheimer's patient and their caregiver are adequately not only compensated, but they have a stipend, but also for that patient population, you have to think about access to clinical trials.
Did
How
you
are they going to get to the site and so
did
on?
did you start seeing, because I know so many in this space that don't think that way. Did it, and you
Yeah,
don't
they
have
don't.
to get into details regarding your family, but was it because of the personal situation you had that made you be aware of this, or was it something before that you were aware of constantly?
I think I was way more aware of it once I had my son enrolled in a clinical trial for something that doctors tell you there's no cure. It wasn't something like a rare disease, morbid type of situation, but you go from one doctor to another, and you get to a site that's like, yes, we're opening clinical trial. We think it's going to help him. And I'm like, okay, great. I want to see the ICF. I want to see the study design. What are we getting ourselves into? Um, and it was a long ICF, and the one page that says, the compensation for clinical trial, $25.
Yeah.
25.
So it's not
But
enough.
no, but the amount of time that it took for us to drive back and forth, get him out of daycare, take him to a different town, go to this academic center, deal with the parking,
Take
just
time off of
the
your
amount of
work.
time that it took. Yeah, my work, my husband's work, and everything.
Mhm.
And $25 to watch a child slowly eat applesauce to see whether he's going to have an allergic reaction or when he's going to have it. Just those food challenges are horrible. And then
Yeah.
when he does have tummy aches, whatever, runs up to the nurse like, I think I'm sick.
Mhm.
The best way he can verbalize it, they have to give him epinephrine. Then you have to wait for 2 hours. And then he throws up again, more epinephrine. So you've spent like 6, 8 hours on site, no
Wow.
compensation for nothing.
Wow.
So yeah, that really changes your perspective on things. And I'm a huge patient advocate. I'm a huge advocate for people to advocate for themselves for healthcare. I love clinical trials as a healthcare option. Um, the reason I'm wearing pink, I'm a 4-year breast cancer survivor.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
so if there is a trial, cancer, whatever, I will advocate for those patients and I will get them what they need within the scope of my abilities. But yeah, um,
I
it's a lot.
see. So it's definitely
But
personal for you, and
very,
yeah, and it takes people like you to show everyone else like the reason. I think sites don't lose sight of that as easily
no,
because we deal with the patient every day. But I think it's very easy at the CRO, at the sponsor, and definitely at the tech vendor to like forget about the ultimate purpose
because
of all of
everything's
this.
siloed.
Right?
The work is
Yeah,
siloed, very much
yeah.
so. The bigger the CRO, the more siloed the work is. Every functional area is like, no, this is not my job. This is not my job. This is all I do. And I've always stretched myself to help people. Like somebody sends me something like, I don't know what this is, but let me see if I can figure out. So I think one of the
Mm,
advantages that I have, having been within a CRO, same CRO, for such a long time, I know a lot of people.
yeah.
I know people at the top. I know people at the bottom. I mingle with everybody. And you never know when, you might need your back scratched by somebody to get you a favor or get something done.
What do you
So
think? You're basically a generalist, right? Like I mean, obviously the contracts and budgets are like foundational to your career.
yeah.
But like you said, you've basically been project management, you've been site startup, you've been
Mhm.
feasibility. I mean, you've done everything, right? Site relationships. So you're essentially a PM or a CTM as well, like those skill sets.
Yeah, that's
Do you,
without a title.
without a title, like a generalist, I call it generalist. Like once you've mastered, I think I first of all, this thing generalist, I don't think anyone ever becomes a generalist. I think it's just something you can strive for. And there's a spectrum of like one end is unattainable and the opposite end is like a specialist. So
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in between, and a lot of it is just being in this industry long enough.
Mhm.
Like you become more of a generalist, right?
Yeah.
So you've seen enough to where I guess if you had a magic wand to fix one or two things about this industry, like what would it be?
Um, I was just asked that question, I think, last week. If I could have a magic wand and fix something in this industry, two things. I will give you the quick answer. And that was the answer that I gave to the person who asked me that question last week, was I would fix the whole benchmarking to be more up to speed to what the market actually requires. We need to save the sites. We need to keep
I love
those
that.
businesses afloat. We need to keep those businesses afloat, because we're not only helping people with unmet healthcare needs. There's so many examples of that. You and Dr. Fox have discussed that on your podcast before. Um, yeah, we need to fix the benchmarking. So it's not only the CROs and sponsors who are staying afloat. I mean, a lot of sponsors go out of business. I've seen that happen. And then sites don't get paid at all. That's also one of the escalations I've dealt with. But the other side of things, that if I could wave a magic wand and have it fixed, is the lack of holistic training for the different functional areas throughout the CROs and sponsors.
So the lack of generalists,
The lack of training.
the lack of training.
Yeah.
So you think
To help.
everyone's so siloed, at least early on in their career,
Mhm.
that, you, because you've been in this over a decade, me, same thing, like I've worked at CROs. By the time you get to like where we're at, it's too late. Like there's the majority of people are in the specialist phase still, and they're just trained on like one aspect and that's it, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, even the specialists that I have to work with, they don't have, they have their education, they have their JDs, but their CRO or sponsor have not taken the time to do the shadowing. It's very difficult to do shadowing in this remote world.
Mm,
The reason I feel I have great contract negotiation skills is because my line manager actually, I don't know how many weeks we did this, but he actually sat down with me next to a screen. We went through the entire CTA section by section with him helping me understand the intent of the language, why it's there, and why sites might want to change it.
mm.
Nobody does that anymore. So I am very thankful to that line manager
Wow.
um, for taking the time and showing me those things. When I was a trainer for like the budget development process, I still have those WebEx recordings where I would go step by step. This is how you do it. This is why you do it. This is what you need to pay attention to. Because if you don't pay attention to these small things, you're going to have a snowball effect downstream and you're going to waste so much time um, fixing it.
Mm,
So when you have solid training, you will be able to get rid of some of that white space of or inefficiencies, the time spent fixing the inefficiencies on the CRO and sponsor side. If you can get it done right the first time, person knows what they're doing, they're confident, they can tackle situations, and they feel supported by their line managers, trainers, whatever, peers and mentors to
yeah.
do the job. It's gonna come like second nature. Like I can look at the budget and tell you what's wrong with it.
Yeah. I think
So
that I think a lot of these like organizations as they get bigger, and you're like perfect because you've been with the same company for over a decade, right? So you've
mhm,
seen them grow. I think the best companies, like, you lose efficiency as you get bigger. Well, no,
yeah.
you increase efficiency as you get bigger, but you lose
Mhm.
flexibility, right?
Yeah,
And like,
the lose agility. Yeah.
yeah, the smaller, like, I talk about sites because that's what I know primarily,
Mhm.
but I think it applies to everything. Like, when you're a startup site, you only have like 5 employees, like Yuma Clinical
Yeah.
Trials right now. We're agile. Like, if one coordinator's gone, hey, the other one come in, just do. We don't really skip a beat, but we are losing efficiency because we don't have the scale
And revenue.
and revenue, right? But as we get bigger, you lose that agility because it's so easy to just streamline. Hey, you just do this, you just do that, and then as
Hmm.
you get even bigger, you start getting into the magic wand issue that you're trying to fix, which is
Yeah.
you need to cross train people. So I think the best like big organizations have small departments that like do this well. They act like best of both worlds as much as they can. Um, but the reason I'm bringing this up is what's next for your career? So these two things, these two magic wand issues that you discussed, I
Yeah.
guess FMV updating it and then cross training to not have
Yeah.
specialists everywhere. Do you think like what's next for your career personally? Do you think you want to do like CTM, project management, even though you've done those things, but like to actually do it like as your day
Yeah,
to
as my
day?
main job responsibility. Yeah, that's the next step in my career that I'm looking forward to. As a matter of fact, I'm going to a networking event this evening to
Hmm.
connect with recruiters and other pharma in the area. So you have to network, you have to talk to people because you
Show
can
them this
apply to
podcast.
100
It'll be up. It'll be up on YouTube.
you can apply to hundreds of job posts through my workday whatever, and you're going to get the same automated response. Sorry, we picked somebody else. Well, did even anybody look at my resume or not? But what's next in my career is I'm at a stage in my life, personal life too, where I have the ability to go back to school. I am starting an MBA program here in a couple of weeks.
Mm.
I am going to work on my PMP certification. I already finished my Lean Six Sigma yellow belt training provided by my employer, which like totally opened my eyes how important metrics are. And yeah, I will work on
Wow.
getting into the project management, so I can wear the multiple hats and I don't have to be siloed within one function anymore.
And
That's
kudos to your
the long-term goal.
employer. Kudos to your employer for doing that. We make fun of CROs a lot on the show. Not a lot, but it's just here and there, little jabs.
Yeah.
But like they're doing, if they're the ones that paid for this training for you, the yellow belt, I mean
Mhm.
that's really good. Like they do a lot of that goes unnoticed by people in the
Yeah.
industry. So I'll give them a shout out like where they deserve it because they do deserve it in many
Yeah.
instances.
Yeah.
That's really
They
cool.
have more resources, and when the time is right in the market, they have more resources that they can allocate to employee retention. So I have really enjoyed being part of employee resource groups. We have young professionals, or non-CRO, non-pharma professionals, group who are trying to make it within the CRO pharma world. We have one of those resource groups. We have all these communities where employees can feel supported. And I love that I have had the opportunities to see the organization grow from, small, not even a thousand employee to many thousand employee organization. And you have so many
Wow.
opportunities to feel connected to your peers, even though you are working remotely. But part of that employee resource group, they have all kinds of initiatives for internal training. We have a huge training department, and all you need to do is just knock on your manager's door or during your one-on-one discuss, hey, I would like to do this.
So these
And
CROs, this is advice for the people starting their careers, right? I always suggest, hey, go start at a small site. From there, you can get the skill set quick and you can go anywhere you want. But let's say you finally get to a CRO, like
yeah,
you did. That was your first job, actually, CRO. How many of your peers do you think actually take advantage of these trainings, like percentage wise?
maybe less than five.
Less than 5% take advantage
Um,
of these training opportunity for free
yeah,
at these CROs.
yeah, yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, guys and gals watching, listening, is on you. Like their resources are out there.
They
All
are out there.
right.
You just have to know how to find them.
But is that the issue? Like knowing how to find them or just not doing it?
The systems within large organizations are so confusing. I mean,
Mm,
I'm having a hard time getting to my time card every month.
I see.
It hides somewhere else. So technology is definitely something challenging to keep up with, not only on site side, um, but also on the CRO side.
Mm.
Systems change, technology changes. We're gonna revamp our portal here and there, and then you can't find the stuff. But yeah, it's there. You have to make connections. You have to be ready to make connections. I'm one of the oddballs that still enjoys going to the office. I love it because I get to meet people, I get to talk to people, I get to network with
Do you
people.
work from home? You work from home?
I have the flexibility to work from home, but I actually go into the
Ah,
office. I have a desk.
because you're in RTP. What a archaic thing, a desk.
RTP.
The so because you're in RTP, you do have an office nearby. Like it's the
Yeah.
headquarters, right?
Yeah.
Mm. And how do you
Hmm.
when you go, do you feel like a increased sense of camaraderie?
Yes. Yes, a sense of belonging. You belong to an organization that cares about you.
Uh,
I love the Nespresso machine that's there. I love the cafeteria because they
y-
subsidize the food for employees. You can get breakfast for $2 or lunch for $4, and it's great. Um, so I have been lucky enough to appreciate the efforts that the organization puts forth to keep employees coming back to the office.
I
Um,
see. And the RTP,
that's for
so if
sure.
someone's in RTP, like, do you suggest, let's say someone's watching, listening right now, and do you suggest they move to RTP to try to get hired easier, or do you think that's not necessary anymore in like a 2023 and beyond world?
RTP is a very high cost living area at the moment. Apple is moving here, like 3 miles from my house.
I
They're
heard.
building the new facility. Cost of living in it is insane. I love living in North Carolina. North Carolina is home for me. after living in Latvia, where I was originally born. North Carolina's home. It's very expensive, and there's no shame in taking a remote role.
Mhm.
It's just whatever works for you, whatever works for your personality, for your working style. I am very fortunate that I moved here, and we have property before the insane
For the boom.
real estate boom. Um, yeah, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be here, and I love it. And if you want to move here, it's a great place to raise family. But if you're somebody who's just starting out at the beginning of your career, the cost of living is getting insane. So,
Do
but
you
get a
think
job with a CRO remotely. They pay well, they have great benefits. The CRO benefits, I think, are way better than, let's see, benefits if you go through a recruiting company, much better. Um, so yeah, I've been on the job search for the past year. The market is very, very rocky right now. Everything is in huge turmoil. Um, but I'm up for the challenge. I've been through mergers and acquisitions along the course of my career. I've had so many lessons learned, and I am ready to branch out even more.
and someone like you who doesn't need to, you voluntarily go to networking events, so
Yeah,
on a regular
yeah.
basis,
There's
that
yeah,
says a lot
there's
about you.
plenty of there's plenty of professional groups out there in the area.
And you're
I
coming
don't
to
know if I
Save Our
can.
Sites, right? SaveOurSites.com.
I hope so. I hope so.
Oh,
If I
I didn't
can
know. I put you on
add
the
for
spot.
the ski trip.
Yeah, okay, okay.
um,
Well, shameless plug
yeah.
for Save Our Sites conference.
No, you guys got me excited and I want to go now. So I just need to figure out the logistics. And
Okay.
I don't know where I'm gonna be in February,
Well, Tucson
job
in
wise.
February is amazing, right? Everywhere else is
That's what I
snowing.
heard.
It might even be like 75 or 80 degrees and sunny.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, if
amazing.
I'm going to Tucson, the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have my ski bag with me, and I'm gonna go to Salt Lake City to ski for a
Yeah,
couple of days, and then go home. So
right after. Yeah. Beautiful
that's the
setup.
plan.
That's an ultimate travel stack right there. Valena, thank you so much. I guess we got to see, when we have guests like you, it's not enough 1 hour. Like we would have to do a part
No.
two, part three to really get under the hood of like all of these verticals that I know we
Yeah.
spent a
Just hit me
majority of it
up.
on
I
contract.
have I have lots of ideas. I have lots of suggestions on what sites should do better. Pick a topic and we can beef it out and figure out.
Let's go. Maybe we'll do something on Save Our Sites platform as well with Dr. Fox. That would be pretty cool for our next one. So
Yeah,
thank you so much,
we
Valena.
can do that.
Everybody go connect. Her LinkedIn is underneath the video or in the show notes if you're listening on your favorite podcast player. Um, Obviously someone you need to connect with, no matter what you are in this space. She's a generalist by this point. So thank you, Valena. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Bye bye, everybody.